Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dinner Parties Rehoboth Beach podcast. Dinner Parties Rehoboth Beach is a reality show taking place within the Southern Delaware Beach community. Our collective group of couples hold dinner parties in the Rehoboth Beach and Lewis areas at their homes or select party venues. Our cast are residents and members of the LGBTQ+ community who work and live in the community as business owners, community activists, in nonprofit, designers, and professional service providers. Each episode will focus on one couple's preparation and the experience around each of their dinner parties. All couples in attendance rate their experience by categories such as decorations, food and beverage, and entertainment. Our season finale will show a final party during the holiday season. Rehoboth Beach and Lewis, Delaware offer a unique backdrop as a beach town with wonderful shopping, ocean views, boating, and of course, beautiful beaches. In this podcast, we get to know each of our couples and their respective backgrounds with our host, Michelle Fenning, the creator of Dinner Parties Rehoboth Beach and co-founder of Blind Eye Productions. This week, we are welcomed into the beautiful home of Tom and Vince to hear their story and introduce an informed and educated perspective, not only on the history of Lewis, but current events that affect the community. Tom and Vince have dedicated their time throughout the years to philanthropy within and beyond the state of Delaware. So keep listening and get inspired to take pride in and stand up for your community.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
We're here with Vince and Tom, one of the two of the cast members of Rehoboth Dinner Parties, and we're going to just have a little conversation today so you all can get to know them a little better. They could talk about their story, their philanthropic work, and the beautiful home that they have here in Lewis, Delaware. Most of the cast members live in Rehoboth or Lewis, so this is a show about this area, and it is about the work that the cast members are doing, and it's about having a dinner party. So they all love to entertain, they've all had dinner parties, and that's what we're talking about. So, hello
Morning.
to Vince and Tom.
Good morning.
So let's start out by you guys telling your story. How did you all meet, and how long ago was that? How many years have you been together as a couple?
We've been together 38 years. We met, obviously, it would be in 1986. And we were out separately, and we went to a bar. And when we went to this bar, the old-fashioned way, we met. Tom was with somebody. I was with a friend of mine. And I ran into him at the bar and introduced myself. And it turned out that he was actually on a date with another person.
Well, I was actually on a shake-a-date. So I accepted an invitation to go out with somebody, but I didn't think it was a date. And then slowly through dinner, I realized it was. Somebody thought it was a date.
You were
so
deserved.
it was called Shake-a-Date. So we decided to go to the Lost and Found, and no, it was Badlands. We decided to go to Badlands so that I could kind of like get lost in the crowd and just go home. But when we walked in the door, Vince was there, and this guy and Vince worked together. They were colleagues. So they started talking, and the group started talking to each other, and then Vince and I got to talking to each other, and he asked me if I wanted to go out and have dinner some other time. I was leaving actually the next day for a 3-week sailing trip. So I said no, I'm leaving for a 3-week sailing trip, and no. And I was really still on my shake-a-date. I was like, trying to get out of there. So he said, well, why don't I just call you when you get back? And I was like, can I have your phone number? And I said, no, I generally give out my phone numbers to people I just met in a bar. He said, well, I can find your phone number. I'm like, okay, go ahead, try. And he did, and found it and called me.
Well, he wasn't quite that obnoxious. He kind of said, hey, I know this person, he knows that person. Nobody had a paper or pencil. It just said, hey, I know how to get a hold of you. I'll just ask Bob, who was this other guy. So that's what happened. And we ended up meeting then, and we've been together ever since.
And how many years have you been married?
Well, we got to get married. I did not want to get married until it was illegal for everybody to be married. California got married. Massachusetts was getting married. Thomas says, let's fly to Canada and get married. I'm like, no, I live in Delaware, or we lived in D.C., and I said, I'm not getting married till it's legal for everyone. And I didn't want, partial rights. So once they passed the Marriage Act, we said, fine, we'll get married. Actually, I never thought it was going to happen, but we ended up getting married. And been great.
That's romantic.
It's
isn't it?
interesting, no, but people said, what was the difference after you got married since you were together for so long?
Right.
And I kind of consider myself to be married anyway because I didn't need the government telling me whether or not I was allowed to be with this person or not. So, but in actuality, right after we got married, somebody said, well, why, what's the difference? And I said, actually, there's a sense of security that you have with marriage. Mm-hmm. When you have that, you have your rights, but you have a responsibility to each other, and I think it does make a huge difference, even though we're probably destroying all of straight America's marriages with our marriage, but it's the way it goes.
So let's talk a little bit about your wedding.
Sure.
In your lovely home. I have seen some of your wedding pictures. Your two beautiful dogs are front and center.
They're here.
Right. So why don't we tell everybody the dogs' names and
Duffy and Fina. Duffy, say hi.
and what type of dogs are they?
Duffy is an 11-year-old Sprudel, half Springer, half Poodle, and Fina is a 16-year-old Golden Doodle.
They're beautiful dogs.
Thank you.
Lots of energy, but they're fun. We love them.
Who in the middle of last night's dinner party went in the pool on her own. Completely on her own, which was unusual.
That's swinging laps and everything was very funny.
She needed a dip.
She did. Well, it's hot today.
Or today. So let's talk.
So at the wedding, I'll give you some background on the wedding. It was interesting because we wanted to do it here. Our friends were here. Our family's all pretty local. My family's all in Maryland, and his family is in New Jersey, so we decided it was a good point to meet. Easy. Nobody had to fly anywhere. And that way we could have, oftentimes you have these destination weddings, and a lot of the people that are the closest to you can't make it because A, they can't afford it, or B, they don't have time to get away. So you end up with a group of friends, but not really all of the people that you'd like to have there. Okay. So we decided to do it here, something simple, easy, at the beach, and it just blew out from there. It was interesting because we went into, neither one of us are very religious, both raised Catholic, but we went to the Episcopal Church, and we met with the priest there, nicest man in the whole world, and we just said, hey, we'd like to get married. Is it okay we get married in the Episcopal Church? And he said, absolutely, it doesn't have to be anything more than what you want, religious-wise. And we said, well, actually, we have a friend of ours who is an Episcopal priest who can marry us. And Jeff, who's the priest director, said, you can do anything you want. He said, actually, he said, it's amazing. He said that it's nice to see somebody who's been together as long as you guys have actually getting married and knowing that you're in a secure relationship. He said oftentimes people have been together for a year, 6 months, 3 months, and they're wanting to get married. And he has a problem, because he doesn't feel that they necessarily even know each other that well. And they haven't grown together. I think that's what happens over a period of time. But we had all of our families here. It was a huge event, out on the lawn. We walked from the church down to our house here. And the church had a lot of special meaning because we used to live across the street, right on 2nd Street. So we looked at that church for years and years and years. And that's how we ended up. And we just put tents down on our lawn here. Our neighbors were awesome. And it actually kind of looked like the Denver airport. I mean, it was ridiculous. These tents and everything. But it was super fun. And Thomas, he said, well, we have a boat out front. He goes, well, maybe at the end of the wedding, we'll just get on the boat and we'll just go out and leave. I said, well, where are we going to go? We're just going to go out on the boat, turn around and come back, and everybody's still going to be sitting here. I said, this is kind of silly. So we just stayed. It lasted like 4 in the morning. It was super fun, though.
Anything you want to add?
I
love that description. That was great.
We really struggled with that, where, how, venue,
right.
destination, how big, how small. Like we went through all. Honestly, it's what most people go through when they're thinking about getting married. And then finally, the notion of a home wedding became a way to both make it, the spirit of it to be very kind of homey and very, the most intimate, the family and closest friends. And it also limited some expectations on invitations. I work in Washington, I work in politics. It's a big network of people, genuinely people I love, respect, and admire, but not 700 people can come to your wedding. Right. So we the notion of getting married at home was like when people would say, oh, you're getting married, and I'd say, we're just having a small wedding at the house in Delaware. And it just immediately made everything kind of just much more manageable. And then that was the feeling of the wedding. The tent was, on the front lawn. We did the bar in the middle. No, the dance floor wasn't in the middle. The dance floor was a separate tent entirely. It was like its own club. So the bar became the center of it. It was just food stations. It was random tables, high tops, low tops, long picnic tables, round tables. And everyone could go and do whatever they wanted. We had a raw bar on the dock where the boat was. Right. It just was just have fun. Right.
Right.
And it really worked. I mean, it worked as a theme. It worked as an attitude, as a vibe on it. And then afterwards, we had kind of an after party back here. We had an after party actually in the living room. We emptied out the living room. We did a piano. A show tune guy came and did show tunes. People loved that, and we had martinis. And then the after party was back here, but at the pool on the way back, we did like a lounge back there. And like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, my niece and nephew were playing the guitar and singing. Everyone was hanging out. People were like just relaxed, and then then a bunch of people went and had a dawn party on the boat. But we did not participate in
the dawn
party with whatever champagne was left on the boat. That's how the wedding ended. So it was great. Though.
That's
it was
so
really
wonderful.
lovely, yeah.
Right. So it's so memorable. Right. It was your closest family members. It was everybody that you wanted around
And
you.
we both have big families.
Right.
So he's one of 6, I'm one of 5. Big families, Irish Catholic families. So the families themselves are almost 120 people. So, like, if we just had a family wedding and just invited to nieces and nephews level, it's like 100 plus people.
Okay.
So it was, it was important for us to be able to be big enough to have some friends show up. So we went up at 250, I think.
But the most important thing is a wedding planner.
Okay.
Because
Very
a wedding
nice.
planner is somebody that is more of an arbitrator
Right.
than a planner. He actually saved the marriage before we had the marriage. So that you got to have a wedding planner.
Somebody's a little cheaper
Yeah,
than somebody else.
but it's true. It's just somebody so that you can, when you have 2 bridezillas, it makes it difficult.
So it's funny. I had a house wedding also.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my wedding was like 70 people, and it was just everybody I wanted around
It's
me.
very intimate.
Yeah.
It really is very intimate to do it in your home or
Yeah.
around your home.
Yeah.
And it was really great to be able to do it at St. Peter's. Like all of our nieces and nephews grew up at that house in the summertime. So they were across the street. My nieces and nephews used to play with their golden retrievers in the graveyard. Like that was their thing. They'd go play with the dogs and throw, catch. So everything about it was familiar and had a history. It had a connection.
Right.
So it didn't feel like you're in some random hall somewhere.
Right.
Right. Off Route 1 or
It's your place,
wherever it would have been. So it was great. Yeah, it was exactly what we wanted, and it turned out great. I would just add one thing, that the difference between being married and not being married, although there was like 32 years and we were the world's longest engagement, the affirmation of your friends and family, and the notion that you're supported by community writ large, community in a personal way, but also community in a social governmental way, really did make a difference in the way I felt that day. Like, this was an opportunity for us to really literally stop being kind of in a shadow. We were no longer in the shadows. We had the same traditional, really almost same traditional wedding our sisters have had and our brothers have had. My parents were in the front row. Like it was exactly the same. And my mother's very Catholic. My parents were very Catholic, and she was like, "Can we do an Episcopal? Are we allowed in the Episcopal church?" I mean, Mom, it's like literally exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Nothing different about it. But it was that feeling of coming really legitimately out of the shadows, permanently out of that, was a really important, affirming feeling, and I underestimated how that was going to feel.
Well, we were together for quite a while before our families even knew about each
Oh, really?
us being together.
Okay.
So that process of change that happened from 86 to now is amazing to see where things came from. I think a lot of it had to do with AIDS. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that friends and family had members and close loved ones that were dying. And Rock Hudson dies and all that starts happening, and people are like, oh my God, life is precious and people are precious, and we don't care who you are, we're just glad that you're here. So I think it had a lot to do with it, which is when we first met and we were together, Tom was working in helping in the AIDS crisis, and that's kind of how he started a lot of his career. He was a social worker. Well, I'll let you say what you did.
Thank you.
I'm just very proud of him, that's all.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I did remember that you worked within the AIDS crisis. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
And look how far we've come.
Yeah, we have come far. Not far enough. We're not in a cure. That was always the goal and the mission. So I'm a social worker by profession, and then an advocate by trade. So I worked in group homes, opening up group homes for people with developmental disabilities. And my first job was to get a zoning board variance to open up the group home. And if you ever want to do rough and tumble politics, people say, "Oh, how do you stand politics?" It's there's the capital. It's so negative, blah blah. And it's not great at the moment, but I'm telling you, my local hometown zoning board was worse. It was nasty. It was really hard.
Okay.
And like, people were against this group home because they were just against others. They just like,
Well, they didn't want it in their backyard. It's that typical,
Very
like,
indeed.
I like those people, but not here.
Right, right.
So that kind of opened up the door on the political side of things. That if you're not doing the politics, you're not doing the program.
Right.
And so over the course of a few years, I got my master's degree. I went on a presidential campaign. I was working for the National Association of Social Workers, and I kind of wrote this presidential endorsement process for them. And then the campaign that we were going to endorse, Walter Mondale wound up hiring me out of my internship. I spent almost 2 years on the road doing politics. It was fascinating, great education. And when I came back, I went to work for the Child Welfare League of America as their lobbyist. And one day, a group of agencies called us and said, we're having a crisis with abandoned infants. These kids are being left in ICUs, and we need some help figuring out how to get them into the foster care system. And so I didn't realize why they were being abandoned, but it was because their mothers had found out they had AIDS and their babies had AIDS. And both were in that moment, both were going to die.
Right.
So the mothers would frequently just leave, and the kids were stuck, those infants were stuck. So I just wrote a very simple, small little piece of legislation called the Abandoned Infants Act. And it was just a kind of a supercharged foster care system, mostly to find foster parents who were willing to care for dying children, because they were largely going to die within 6 weeks to 6 months. And I got a call one day and said, would you be willing to come work for a group that's trying to get an AIDS advocacy effort started? And I was like, no, I have a great job. Working on children's issues in those days particularly was great. Like pretty much everyone, you didn't always get everyone's support, but like people generally liked you and they took your meeting, and members wanted kids issues on their record.
Right.
So like I could get a lot of stuff done, and it was not politically that difficult.
Right.
So I explained to the folks that called me from the AIDS community that I didn't pass the bill really with AIDS as the primary objective. It was really about taking care of these kids and the fact they were dying, and people really had sympathy. And they were like, that may be true, but this is the first time anyone's passed a piece of legislation that's specific to AIDS, and we feel like there may be something in that we if we hire you, you could figure that out for us. I said no about 15 times. And then a friend of mine, we were working on the Americans with Disabilities Act together, she and I. She came to me one day and she said this group that was called AIDS Action called her and asked her if she would take the job. And she said, I just want to know why you have consistently said no. Is there something going on? And I said, no, I just don't want to be an executive director. I don't want to deal with the board. I want to do lobbying. I want to do politics. I want to get legislation passed. And if you're the executive director, you're worried about the board, you're worried about the office, you're worried about payroll, you're worried about all that crap.
Right.
So I said no to that. And she said, well, what if I take the job of executive director and you become the policy director? And I said, I didn't really think this was the issue I wanted to work on.
Right.
Like I was working on kids' issues. I had, foster care, I had adoption, I had, housing, I had all these great disabilities, a huge portfolio. And I'm like, I don't think a single issue is my thing. But I went home for Easter. Right after that conversation, I was sitting with my grandmother, very Irish Catholic, off the boat. And I was pretty sure she'd tell me it wasn't a good career move. ACT UP had just done a St. Patrick's demonstration.
Okay.
They had thrown the communion with St. Patrick's. Is very controversial, particularly in New York, where I grew up.
And you weren't out of the closet.
And I was not out. No, I was not out.
Okay.
So I just said to my
Anybody.
Okay.
I'm like,
Maybe me.
I'm like, what do you think about this thing? I had this opportunity to go work on this AIDS issue, blah, 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 blah. And she said to me, she was just reading in the Catholic news that Mother Teresa was helping people with AIDS. And she wondered why, if it was good enough for Mother Teresa, why it wouldn't be good enough for me. To go
Wow.
Wow. Like, totally dropped a bomb on me. I was like, wow. And then I kept thinking about that. Well, yeah. I mean, if it's good enough for Mother Teresa, why don't I do this? And my friend Jean, who took the executive director job, she's like, there's nowhere to go but up, right? There's nothing here.
Right.
This issue's totally in the toilet. People don't want to work on it. They don't care about it. They don't want to fund it. Let's just try. I mean, it's like, when will we ever get an opportunity to create something from the ground up?
Right.
And so we did, and we created what became the Domestic AIDS Lobby. We passed the Ryan White Care Act. We did all the research and treatment funding. We did, the Americans with Disabilities Act. I chaired the lobby effort to do that from AIDS Action. So that's kind of how it started, and it was a 5-year incredible run, but it was really hard.
Right.
Single issue politics is hard. Single issue politics when people are literally dying around you was harder. And so, we won a lot. At the end of the day, we won a lot, but we also lost a lot.
Right.
And every time we lost a vote, we were also losing people. At the same time those votes were going on, sometimes people we knew well. Like, it was very common to go to a funeral or a memorial service 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
I don't know, I never was in a war, I'm not a veteran of anything like that, but I often wonder whether or not the emotional trauma of, that many people literally dying around you is similar to the way a veteran would feel.
Right.
With, and young. I mean, they were all in their 20s
Right.
and 30s. We
Right.
were all young.
Right.
So it was just it was an incredible experience, but I knew at 30, Vince asked me what I wanted to do for my 30th birthday, and I said I wanted to hike Kilimanjaro. I have no idea. I mean, since I was in high school, I thought that was a really cool idea, but I had no idea. I'm not a hiker.
It wasn't like going to Shakey's Pizza. Oh, we're going to hike Kilimanjaro. I'm like, okay.
So we did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so on the top of Kilimanjaro on my 30th birthday, I decided I loved my work, but I couldn't keep doing
Right.
keep doing AIDS work.
Right.
It was hard. ACT UP was on one side, Jesse Helms and the religious right was on the other side. Neither of them liked me.
Right.
So I was constantly being fired at from both sides. Getting stuff done, the middle ground is what you want in politics, is what you want in legislation, but it was hard.
Right.
And I used to say to myself every day, if everyone doesn't like me, I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
That was like the only way I could ground the feeling of being
Yes. Yeah.
like kind of vilified on both sides.
Right.
So we came back from Africa, and I was like, I'm gonna do something different. And then I started my firm,
Right.
which was the idea was just to help lots of different issue groups figure out how to best use public policy to advance their mission. So we started the Sheridan Group with a goal of helping the good do better. And we did that for 30, we're still doing that. 36 years later, we're still working on helping the good do better.
Which is your book.
That's my book, yeah. Thank you for the
Very,
plug.
very inspiring. Very
It's
inspiring.
available paperback now.
No, the book is just the book is about stories. It's I'm Irish, so storytelling kind of comes naturally or genetically. So it's stories of issues that took the best of their issue and made it into something
Right.
in the advocacy and policy space. And some of it's big legislation like the ADA or Ryan White. Some of it's smaller stuff like just getting social innovation promoted and welcomed by government. National Service, AmeriCorps. I mean, there are lots of different stories in the book, but there's stories that are real stories about what happens behind the scenes.
Right.
And good guys always come in with great intention, but they don't always come in with great strategy
Right.
And discipline.
Right.
And just because you're right doesn't mean you're going to win. In fact, half the time
You're not.
You're not, and just being right is not going to be good enough. You have to
Yeah.
actually be political enough to get
Right.
it to go through. So that was kind of what I thought my gift was to the community, to the progressive community, was that I was kind of unsympathetic to intention and very disciplined about strategy. And if people hired me, I'm like, you're going to work really hard. You're going to and you're going to push yourself to do things beyond things that you normally would have thought you could do or would do. But you're not interested in making an argument. You're interested in winning a fight.
Right.
And that's about counting votes, and it's about building coalitions, and it's about getting bipartisan support, and it's about compromise at the end of the day. So the book is just about kind of an unapologetic exposition of what that is like when you're in the room.
Right.
I wanted to call it In the Room Where It Happened from the Hamilton. Did you see Hamilton?
Yes, I love that. I love that bit in Hamilton. Yeah.
I love that scene. I love that song. I really wanted to use In the Room Where It Happened, but the publisher was like, we may actually, the Hamilton folks may challenge that, and it's going to delay publication. Can we think it's something else? But that's what it's about. What it feels like to be in the room when those kind of big changes are happening.
I also think that the lesson that I learned was a lot of people have a negative thought about lobbyists. They're like, oh, a lobbyist, horrible, corrupt people. But if every side, there's a lobbyist on one side for the evil, there has to be somebody on the other side. And if you don't have a lobbyist that's helping you, then you're going to be stuck, and the other side's going to win.
Right.
So a lobbyist is really not necessarily a negative term, and I
Right.
just think that he had looked at running for Congress or at one point, and one of the biggest red flags is that, oh, he's a lobbyist. And I was like, why is that a bad thing?
Right.
But it's clearly not, and it's something that people need to be aware of. You need to have a lobbyist, or you may want to call him an advocate instead of a lobbyist.
My mother preferred that word.
I'm sure.
She's like, don't tell people you're a lobbyist. I'm
Right.
like, why? I mean, there are good guys and bad guys,
Yes.
in every flag. So, like, I'm the good guy lobbyist. Like, I'm the white hat lobbyist.
Right. And Mother Teresa clearly is a good guy lobbyist, right?
Exactly. Bring the case. Particularly for the progressive causes, the not-for-profit groups, it is really hard for them
Right.
to break through. Not only legally they're bound not to do certain things. Corporations are treated like individuals, thanks to Citizens United, a very bad Supreme Court decision. But not-for-profits are super bound. They can't use certain resources. They can only use a certain amount. They can't do certain things. They can endorse candidates. They are literally hobbled from being involved in advocacy at the same level private interests are. So you have to be extraordinarily good to both play by the rules, which are hobbling, and still win
Right.
against some of these opponents. And every opponent I ever had, I ever ran, on Capitol Hill, I always had private special interest money groups behind us, whether that be the Religious Right, the Heritage Foundation, at one point the Restaurant Association, on the ADA, the Restaurant Association came for people with HIV in the bill. We always had these much bigger moneyed interests as our opponents. So my thing was, you just have to be better, smarter, more
Right.
disciplined, work a little harder. But I think not-for-profits are disincentivized to be involved, and I think it shows. When not-for-profits aren't involved in writing the solutions to social problems, we don't get great solutions. We get half-baked social solutions. We get half-funded. We get not particularly well thought out of research. We don't use the front line of the not-for-profit to inform us on what those solutions should look like. So that was kind of the firm has always had that as its ethos.
Right.
Is get the best, smartest people in the not-for-profit community and give them the strategy to win. And we've won.
Well, you're not going to make
lost a lot.
you're not going to raise enough money at bake sales to cure AIDS.
Right.
The only way to do it is to get the government involved and use government funding, and you need to get the lobbyists or somebody behind those groups to bring them all together. And the other problem is all these different groups were all fighting over the same little piece.
Yes.
And if you bring them all together, they get a bigger piece, and then they can split that up.
Right.
But that's kind of what's happened. Which is why, to maybe talk about why we do what we do as far as fundraising and support.
Well,
here
this is a perfect segue into philanthropic work.
It is.
Right.
So tell us, what are you guys working on right now? What are you supporting? Because I know you're very big in this. So what are you guys doing?
Well, one of the things that's happened, we've been in Lewis for almost about 30-some years now, 37 years. And it's changed so much. I mean, it was a sleepy little fishing town when we first came here. There was no restaurants. There was nothing much here. And then it gradually started changing, and the yoga mats started appearing, and people would be walking around with coffee and the lattes, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on here? And it became more of a resort town. But what happened is we've grown so much, they've used up so much land, and Lewis is actually such a small, just the town itself is incorporated, but the rest of it is all run by Sussex County. So these big developers have come in and they've just taken over all these farms. So it keeps growing and growing and growing. So there's a few plots of land that are still in some small farmers' hands or small, kind of historically owned by some of the bigger families here in Delaware. The Rollins family, for example, owns a huge piece of land behind us. And so what we've done is we're working with it's called Open Spaces. And they are now trying to buy up some of this land to preserve it.
Okay.
So and people are like, why are all these, there's no place to go. There's no place to walk. And we have a beautiful park here, but we need to have parkland around us. So wisely people are.
Yeah, green space.
Green space. And then so wisely people are now waking up and saying, wait a minute, we've got to stop this. So we have these beautiful bike trails, and now they want to incorporate these lands into the bike trails to make it a great space. So that's kind of what we're working on now. We have a fundraiser we went to last night for it. We've got another one coming up here at our house. But one of the things that's happened is that there's such a great community here in Lewis that, it was, when I first came here, it was basically just our gay friends that we got together. And so over the 30 or 40 years now, it's changed the fact that all of our neighbors are friends. We get together, we do dock parties, and anytime we have an opportunity to do an event, we try to include some sort of social, charitable thing behind it so that people are aware of what's going Our neighbors down the street do this huge party every year, hundreds of people, 1,000 maybe, and it's beautifully done. And they have a list of all these different charities that they support, and people are proud of it. So it's a very philanthropic area. A lot of people have the interest in doing that support. So we're part of it.
So let's talk about your role at the Children's Beach House then.
Yeah. So I am the new president of the board of the Children's Beach House as of October 1st. I don't know what I did wrong, but something obviously terribly wrong.
There's Mother Teresa.
Exactly right.
It keeps coming up.
So
I was like, are you getting paid for this? No.
So I am the new president of the board of the Children's Beach House, which is an organization dedicated to kids with social and developmental and physical challenges, mostly communications, disabilities. So these are kids that traditionally the organization has really serviced kids with disabilities, but more and more we're serving kids that are both with disabilities but also challenged by many socioeconomic problems. So the board is growing. Honestly, COVID was a great challenge to the organization, but it was also a great opportunity. We weren't able to run our programs for almost a year, almost a year and a half. We weren't able to raise money because all of our event-based fundraising dried up and died, essentially. So it forced the board into a conversation about what do we want to be next? Can we be different more than we are now? And decided that we're not just a beach house, even though that's the name of our organization. It was given to us by Lydia DuPont, but we're bigger than a beach house, and we're not just a summer program anymore. We're a year-round program, and we're not just in Lewis. We're actually a statewide program, and these kids are in our program for 24/7 all year long, and they live in all 3 counties in Delaware. But we really hadn't embraced the idea of being a statewide, not specific camp-based program. We have an early childhood development center that is really phenomenal, and the only one that actually serves kids with disabilities. So it's a challenge for those families, and people wait to get into that program. But we also
there
realized
a kindergarten too? Is there a kindergarten?
it's a preschool. So yeah, it's 0 to 5.
Okay.
So it's a really incredible program, and the nice part about it is that it's the newest of our programs, and it incorporates typical kids and kids with challenges, which is why we want to build community with kids with challenges and families with challenges, so they can build community and support each other. Isolating them is not a good idea. We need to mix them in. We need to, kids challenge each other. Peer learning is a real thing. And so the idea of integrating the programs more into the broader community and looking at what challenges kids and families in ways that are different than just what you may get in an IEP, saying that you're disabled. If we can break beyond that and look for those challenges and figure out a way to serve them with the expertise we have, that's the challenge in front of us. So we just opened a new program in Milton. We expected, maybe 50 to 70 kids would apply. We went through the school district asking for the kids with these challenges. How can we serve them best? We had 350 applications. We can only take 125 because it's brand new. But it's amazing once you open a door. It's amazing what you will find. And the organization is kind of forward leaning into that. I'm really excited about that. When the program was closed, when the camp was closed, the beach house itself was closed, we have a huge, beautiful commercial kitchen in there. And we kind of thought, what can we do with this space when the kids aren't in it? What can we use it for? And we created an organization called Greater Good Events. It's a social enterprise. It's a catering company, and the proceeds of that catering company are a new way for us to earn money. The hard part about not-for-profits is you have basically philanthropy, which is usually very constrained money, and then you have government, which is more constrained money. So when organizations want to innovate and experiment, there's not really great pots of money. There's no discretionary money for us to be able to go and do a big program, a big idea, a new idea. So the social enterprise is now this discretionary money that we get to use to think about how do we expand into Milton. How do we partner with BB and some of the other bigger not-for-profits around childcare? Childcare for the healthcare community here is hugely problematic. We are a childcare provider. Can we figure out a way to partner with them to help? It's a collaboration. It's an expansion. So we're at a very interesting moment in time, and it's kind of exciting to be kind of at the leadership, at the helm of that particular ship at this moment. Rich Garrett, who's the executive director, also a cast member of the show, is just a phenomenal leader. He's like the rare combination of leader that leads with both their head and their heart.
Right.
It's hard, really hard to do that. He has that, in my judgment, down to a T. He knows how to do both things extremely well, and has really embraced this new change. And a new leader can sometimes bring new change, but it usually can be a little turbulent. An established leader that embraces change can do extraordinary things, and I think we're at this moment where extraordinary things are beginning to happen.
Right.
So that'll be an interesting 2-year run to see if we can get the strategic plan is done. Now it's about implementing it and about funding it. I also serve on the board of DANA, which is the Delaware Alliance for Not-for-Profit Associations.
Okay.
So they're the trade association for not-for-profits in Delaware.
Okay.
And the exciting part about that is I chair their public policy committee. They brought me on. So Jeff Ross, who's the pastor at St. Peter's, where we were married, his wife, Sheila, is the executive director of DANA. And we got to know them by getting married there. Sheila asked me to join their board because they wanted some policy expertise. So I joined the board. I am chairing their public policy committee, and we have just established a 501c4, which is a mechanism for not-for-profits to do advocacy work. So we can endorse candidates. We can do candidate forums. We can count votes. We can hold people accountable for whether they vote for us or not. So it's a more serious kind of big person's approach to doing politics in a real way. They are the first not-for-profit association, statewide association in America to have a 501c4.
Oh, wow.
So
that's great. Congrats.
It's very exciting.
Yes.
Well, it's also kind of a bit of a high wire act. We better not fail.
Because now everybody's going to be watching that, right?
Well, we hope. And
Yes.
we hope we win. I mean, we have Delaware has some very exciting elections coming up. So we have a governor, lieutenant governor, and for not-for-profits, we are about 60% dependent on government funding.
Right.
But we're also the third largest employer.
Delaware is?
In Delaware, the not-for-profit association, not-for-profits are the third largest employer sector in the state, and they're the fastest growing new employer in the state. So we have economic punch and impact, but we don't get treated like that.
Right.
We're kind of like this nice but not necessary
Right.
constituency, and we are going to aim to change that. We're going to be much more necessary to how politics is done in Delaware in the coming years if the vision for the C4 comes
Great.
through. So that's what's keeping me somewhat busy. That's
Right.
my
I
volunteer
bet
work.
your volunteer work is like two full-time jobs.
It is full-time jobs.
Right? Right. So, Vince, are you still working? Are you
I am.
retired? You're still
No, I'm not that old.
No, but some people get it. Doesn't. It's not
I
a matter
spent.
of age.
I know. I'm just. When I graduated from college, I went to GW, got my master's in business, and I went into software. And when I first met Thomas, he said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I work in software." And he was like, "What's software?" So that shows you how long ago I was involved in the computer industry, and I was there for about 20 years, and then I left that and I went into real estate, which I really enjoyed.
Good.
So it was a broker in Washington, D.C., D.C., Maryland, Virginia. I'm still an active broker. And then I work here in Delaware as well. Most of my business here are people that actually used to come stay at our house here, ended up buying a house here, which is nice because now we can go to their house for dinner instead of them all coming here with me for the weekend. But that's kind of... So I'm still doing it. Dinner with friends was basically us. That's what we do. And... So that's how, literally we now have probably 30 people that have bought homes here in Lewis. They
used to freeload here.
That used to freeload. And we miss that. But, that's like last night we had all these people here. All those people that were here last night all moved here to Delaware, having been in our beach house on 2nd Street at one point. So that family and friends thing, it is very important.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the house.
Okay.
The house is wonderful. So this is your second home in Lewis.
Correct.
And I know this is a historic home. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, just to kind of give you an idea how Lewis has changed, I bought my first house pretty much sight unseen for $42,000 on 2nd Street. So people are like, $42,000? So I was like, and we were in a beach house in Rehoboth. I moved all those guys down to the beach house here, and basically I ran it like a fraternity house.
Okay.
So I had everybody there. They paid a little bit. We had a great time, and every night was a dinner party. And then we sold that house. I went for a run one day. He accuses me of not telling him about buying this house. But I went for a
It's not
run.
an accusation; it's actually a fact.
So I went for a run. As I was going by the house, the little granddaughter was putting a rug out. And I said, "Is this house for sale?" And she said, "Yeah, my parents are moving. Grandparents are selling it." And I said, "Well, do you know about how much it is?" She said, "I think it's $1." I was like, "Okay, I'll be right back." So anyway, it was everything that we wanted.
Okay.
And so we ended up buying the house. It was built around 1830s initially. It was a pilot home. So Pilot Town actually was a separate town from Lewis at one point.
Oh.
And Pilot Town was where all the pilots that would go out to ships and take them up the bay to Delaware, from Delaware entry point here, up the Delaware Bay to the Delaware River to Wilmington and Philadelphia.
Okay.
And insurance companies require you to have a pilot on the boat. It dates way back, 1600s, 1700s. Anywhere you go in the world, you have to put a pilot on because they know the harbor, they know the place. So we bought the house and basically gutted the house, but left a lot of the charm that was here historically, and spent a lot of time working on landscaping, and that's how we ended up where we are.
These three houses, our two neighbors on either side, they were considered the Marshall houses. There was one family, the Marshalls. So the original house is next door here to the east.
Okay.
To the west is Sam and Mariah's house. That was the original farmhouse. The first son was a pilot, was a river pilot. So he built this house, and then the second son also was a pilot. He built that house next door. That's now under renovation. So these three houses were one family for many, many years.
Okay.
So they go way back, and they are part of the tradition of pilots. So pilots always kept their boats in front of their houses because they raced to get now they radio for, to get a pilot to come on, so it's not done professionally. In those days, it was a private enterprise, and you had to race your boat out to get whoever got to the ship first got a pilot to jump on the ship, and then they got the job to take them to Philadelphia or Wilmington or wherever they were going back. So the brothers used to keep their houses, and their crews would live in little tiny salt boxes on the front lawn for at least 100 years until I think the 1920s. There was a flood, and the flood wiped out all the salt boxes on the front lawns, and the town then said no more living there because they think people were actually killed in that process. So the history of the pilots and the pilots of Pilot Town Road are interesting. And 4 doors down there, John and Michelle's house, the last living pilot on Pilot Town Road sold that house to them. Probably 15 years ago. I think 15 years ago. Doris Ingram, his widow, bought a little house right here on Queen Anne. She still lives here. She's here in the summertime. So there's a tradition to it. So,
And Lewis is actually quite an artist community as well.
Okay.
So there's once a year they do a studio tour of all the different artists and everything. Doris Ingram is an incredible watercolor artist as well. And the reason why, I think it's because of the light, the reflection of the light from the bay and the ocean. It's very similar to Provincetown.
Okay.
But Provincetown has that, and even you have another place like Key West, where you have the lights from different sides, and you get this incredible light for painting and for photography work and everything else.
this is also an artist.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep. I do. Mine's all pastel.
Okay. Are your works in the house?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There's 2 over there. I give them out as
we'll take
presents
pictures
to.
of them then,
I generally give them as a presents to family and friends and stuff.
Right. So let's talk about your boat.
Oh.
And
one of my favorite topics. Yes.
right. So tell us a little bit about.
So in the tradition of pilots,
Which is great. We're segueing right into boats here.
so the day Vince bought the house when he was out on a run.
I didn't buy it. We bought it.
From the little girl.
From the little
girl,
for $1.
$1.
You made the deal. You sealed the deal with the kid.
I was out doing something else, and I came back, and he said, "You could better come with me. We're moving.
We're buying a house. Yeah, we're moving.
So we came down, and I looked on the front lawn, and I was like, if there's a roof on the house, there's a boat on the dock, no compromise on that, because usually I get the phase 3 improvements. I'm like, I'm going to do. I've been building this boat in my head for most of my life. I've sailed almost my entire life.
Right.
And so I've been building this boat, designing it in my head for years and years. So when we bought the house, we were like, oh, we're going to build a boat. So I had a boat built, and I used an old 1947 plan of a Pilot 37. It was designed by Sparkman and Stevens. They're a pretty famous marine architect firm in New York. I bought the Pilot 37 plan, and we adjusted it. We made it a little bit more modern. We made it a little bit more comfy than it would have been in the 40s. And then I had it built by one particular artist. He really is an artist. He built it for me in Oxford, Maryland. So her name is Kaylee. Kaylee was our golden retriever. Kaylee means party, dance party actually in Irish and Gaelic. And Kaylee was just the most amazing golden retriever. She was a great dog, great puppy. And we were building the boat, but we had not agreed on a name. Surprising. I always wanted to name the boat I was designing in my head the Curragh, which means the boat in Irish.
But nobody could spell it. And nobody could even pronounce it. If you saw the word Curragh in Gaelic, it's like Crougmll. It's crazy. I'm like, Thomas, you cannot use that name.
So we were kind of fighting over what the name of the boat was going to be, and then Kaylee very suddenly died.
How do you spell Curragh?
Curaugh.
H.
It's not that hard. But we had, Kaylee was our dog, and Seamus was our other dog. But every time we went to the vet, they were like, Sealy, Seamus, like they knew how to pronounce their names. Like, no more Irish names, because no one knows how to pronounce them. Anyway, Kaylee died suddenly, and then we were like, that's why we never named the boat, because it needed to be her. So it's named for her. Her portrait's on the boat. It's a lot like her. Very graceful, very elegant, no drama. So she's an all-wood, 37-foot fractional rig sloop. She just went back to Oxford for her 15th season.
Wow.
She's on 30 trips back and forth. We sail her back from Lewis back to Oxford. It's a 29 to 30-hour trip, which is great. It's lots of wonderful time on the water. The guy who built her takes her back, and he does her hair, her makeup. She has a massage. Nails get done. She comes back beautiful.
She gets like a whole makeover
Yeah,
every year.
Exactly. She gets a whole makeover. Well, she needs it. She's all wood. So he said to me, I know this is your least favorite day of the year. We got her back to the port where she winters. We got her there, and I taking all this stuff off, and it's a little bit sad. And he's like, I know this is your least favorite day of the year. And it's like, kind of is my least favorite day of the year. He's like, but it's my favorite day of the year. He's like, I love getting her back. He's like my father-in-law. He's like, I got her. I'm going to take her back. Spoiler. So she's great. And we spend so much time on the boat, sailing with friends and family.
Well, we actually use it for fundraising as well.
Okay.
So we take groups out, people that are here. It could be some sort of raffle or something like that. People bid on it, or we do it that way as well. Well, I think one of the things that it's kind of a different topic, but you talk about Lewis itself, and how it's changed and it's become a community here. A couple of years ago, our neighbors referred a photographer to us, and they were doing a story in Delaware Today, and they wanted to talk about Lewis as a sailing community, and how it's evolving. When we first came here, I think we were the only sailboat, and now there's probably 30 of them out there.
At least.
And they do regattas on Wednesday night and Sunday nights. They do the races. They have races and it's all coordinated, and I don't do the races because I'm not that competitive person where I have to go out and win on this boat. I enjoy going out on it and relaxing on it, not having to, try to beat somebody else.
Plus, none of my friends cannot drink long enough to actually crew a race boat. Because on a race boat, you can usually pop open wine or beer on the last leg. As you're heading in, my friends will never put up with it.
So way too long to wait.
Way too long.
That's how the community has changed, and we know a lot of people that do it. A lot of sailors that are here. We're both avid sailors anyway. We've sailed all over the world, and so it's just kind of fun to see your own little hometown evolving and growing in that same spirit.
So I have a question. So when you are trying to adopt a charity that you're going to be passionate about or support, is there debate amongst the two of you, or do you kind of always see eye to eye on what that should be? Like, obviously the green space, you're both totally tied into that. Like, right. I totally get that. You live here, you're way part of the community. But like when you're picking something, or like you're spending time now with the beach house and with Dana, like, do you ever like debate or have a conversation about what is the best option, like, or what you're most passionate about, like, as a couple?
Well, sometimes I wouldn't necessarily even call them philanthropic things. I mean, we're very involved with local politics, helping our state senator getting elected.
Okay.
We had the first Democratic senator from Sussex County, I think ever, was just elected, which was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Involved with, we do fundraisers here for that purpose as well. So some political things, they're not always, not for profits.
Okay.
But no, I don't think so. Generally, we kind of.
They usually
You're on the
emerge.
same
Emerge.
page.
Yeah, they
Okay,
usually
they usually merge. Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Like the Children's Beach House emerged because a friend of ours, a guy who worked with me at AIDS Action years and years ago, our development director went to work with Rich on a project, and he's like, "You should get to meet Rich. You should pay attention to this. It's it's a local charity. It would be you would probably enjoy working on a local charity because most of my work is national.
Right.
And honestly, the disadvantage of that is you don't always see the impact in the way that you see it.
Right.
And he's like, I think you might actually like seeing
Right.
what's going on the ground. Kids with disabilities they go way back in my professional career to my first job. So he's like, why don't you just meet Rich, have lunch with them, talk about come see the children. And I knew it was there, but I'd never been there. I'd never been on the campus before. And so I met Rich, we started talking, one thing led to another. And then it just emerged as let's put some time and energy into really helping this. And Barry was right. It really did help me kind of refresh my soul a little bit to see the direct service. I mean, I became a social worker for a reason.
Right.
So, I love doing the advocacy, and big change does matter, and I'm good at it. But sometimes it's really refreshing to see the local impact, the actual kids, to meet them and to hang out with them and to meet their families. And so I really, personally, have enjoyed that. And that led to the Dana thing, because so then all the not-for-profits in Delaware face similar problems.
Right.
And Sheila and I were just talking about it one day, and so I found that we have really started to localize our charity a little bit more. That the national stuff has kind of taken takes its own route.
Right.
I'm on a national board for a Save Democracy, a democracy protection organization. And I'm really loving that because I think, honestly, we're not going to solve any problems. If we lose democracy, we lose the ability to solve problems. So I'm very focused on kind of pro-democracy or democracy retention work. But I do love the local work. I'm so excited about Dana. I mean, Delaware it's a small state.
It is a
had
small
big
state,
impact.
right?
So the idea is
Well, we do have a president from here, so we've had an
We do.
impact.
So we have a famous man that everybody kind of knows
He
that
lives around the
lives
corner.
here, lives right around the corner. So that's how you got stuck with me and dinner parties was
Right.
through Rich.
Right.
I apologize for that. So let's talk a little bit about the excitement of dinner parties. And so clearly you guys are so ingrained in that. You see the importance of it. You do a lot of your work through it, right? And so what inspires that? Do you feel that it's around the table? Do you feel like it's the food? Do you feel like it's the camaraderie? When I look at a lot of old shows, honestly, Jesus Christ with the Last Supper, that was a dinner party, essentially. A death dinner party, but it was kind of So how has that I know that's of interest, so it clearly serves a purpose, right?
Right.
And so is it all of that, the food, the drink, the table, is it all of it? Is it the people? Is it how do you kind of what excites, what makes that work?
Well, I think that there's nothing better than sitting down and sharing food with people. And I think that for us, also the part of the preparation and the planning is also fun. I mean, you need to make it fun and exciting. And so we did a dinner party last night for a friend of ours.
And we'll show those photos over this verbiage because we have a picture of the pot pies and things like that.
And we did a big dinner party for that. And part of it is just the fact of gathering people together and networking with people. It's a great way of getting to know people who know people, and that's helpful as well. And we both come from big families. I particularly have a very large family.
Right.
And so
you were kind of raised in the kitchen, both of you, I have a feeling. I was raised in the kitchen,
Right.
so yeah.
It was always the center of the house. My mother hated it. She's like, why does everyone wind up in my kitchen? I can't move in here. Everything's crowded here.
Right.
But my grandmothers were like that too. So gathering is how, at a very early age, how the family we gathered. And we gathered every night for dinner. You were at the table, dressed and cleaned at 6 o'clock to have dinner, and there was if you had a friend who called at 6 o'clock on the telephone, that friend was banished for a month. My mother would never forgive people who called during dinner time. This is way old school, right? But it was
The
always
one phone in the house.
Well,
that's-
You have the one
you know,
phone, and it was always in the kitchen, the
it was
phone,
always
right?
in the kitchen.
And it just drives me crazy now that if you do a dinner party and people come and they're on their phone, or at a restaurant, they're on their phone. Why are you even here?
Right.
I don't tell them and
Right.
say anything, but it's almost like you want to say, check your phone at the door.
Right.
And just come in for an hour. Nobody is that important that they can't come, sit down, and enjoy each other.
Gathering has has lots of dimensions to it, but one of them is the thoughtfulness of preparing. When people walk into your home and they know you prepared for them, it's a welcome, it's a warmth, it's a connection, it's a way of saying thank you for your friendship, sharing a meal together, the conversation, the camaraderie, the laughter, all of it. Even sitting around the fire after dinner, having a calvados, we all did last night. Like that part of the dinner party the gathering experience all means something.
Right.
And so, look, we go back to some of the conversation we had earlier. We lost a lot of people very early. So I think there's a way sometimes for us that we don't take anything for granted.
Right.
We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Right.
And so when you have important people in your life and, and you have time, the commodity that is the most precious is your time.
It's your time.
And so gathering is a way of sharing your time and showing people that they matter to you by spending time with them.
So I'm going to ask this question. I've asked this question for all the couples. And so if you can plan a dinner party that has no limit, it's an endless budget. It could be wherever you want it to be. It could be whatever you want it to be. And you can invite 5 people. These 5 people could be dead or alive. They could be family members, famous people. Who would that be, and what does the party look like and feel like? So, do you want to go first, Vince?
That's a good question.
You guys can think about it for a minute, right? Because isn't it a great question? And the answers we have gotten have been all over the place. Like some people picked some famous people in history. Another couple picked some dead relatives that they really didn't get to know, that they thought would be nice, to sit next to. So it could be anything that you would want. It's like an ultimate wish, anything that you want. It could be anywhere in the entire world. It could be whatever you want it to be. What would that look like, and who would the 5 people be? And you don't have to. It's 5 people for each of you, not just together.
You don't have to collectively. That would take a month.
2.5 people.
I work on consensus-based legislation. Getting to consensus with Vince is the hardest challenge I have.
I can tell you that the location would be here.
Okay.
Because this is where it's comfortable, it's my home, and I love having people come in. Thomas is always, let's go out to dinner. I'm like, no, I don't want to go out to dinner. I like coming here, I like sitting down, and it doesn't have to be fancy. And I think that's part of it.
It doesn't, right?
What I have found that you could do something very simple. Last night we did pot pies, which was not fancy. You can make them fancy by putting them in an individual pot, each one. And so that's one of the things I like to do. So it's simple food.
Okay.
I don't like to have it catered. I like to do it myself. I like to have people here participating in the process of the meal itself, because I think that sharing of bantering, going back and forth, we do with our friends and our family. It's fun. It's not like you just sit down to dinner. And I think the experience of people helping people learn how about cooking, and that they can do it. They can chop an onion, and they can do things like that, make bread, and it's great for little kids. My 5.
No, this is so wonderful that he's sharing that, because that's an important part of the process, and that's a lot of times the preparation up to it is better, is more fun, because you're getting to know people and you're working together, and it does make it.
And you're fighting over. Do not put that ingredient in there.
Right.
He likes to add shit that I don't like to always add. I'm a processed cooker. He's
Right.
like a throw it all in the pot cooker, and I'm like, stay away from my pot.
Yeah, I'm a more creative cook than he is.
Oh, it needs a little this. Oh,
Yeah,
wait, there's some oregano. Why not? Yeah. Oh, I know.
Oh, I've screwed up stuff before, believe me. You're like, oh, where that?
But that's okay, right?
Exactly.
You're not going to screw it up again, right? You only screw it up the first time. So who were your 5?
So the 5, obviously Thomas would be one.
Well, he doesn't count. You don't have to make him be one if you don't want to.
Well, I would.
Okay, that's fine. Because he's going to be there anyway. So.
All right,
Yeah.
and then 5 people on top of that. It's interesting. I have 5 sisters.
Okay.
So, having them together, and I realize that we may not have that much time together. Everybody's very healthy and doing well, but that we have shared. We have stories to share from when we were little, and we have stories about our own families, and that to me is that intimacy is something that nobody else has.
Right.
So to be able to spend time with them is special. And we do try to do that, get together and have time together. Cooking, chatting, being outside. So that's what I would do.
So you have 5 sisters. You're
have
the
5.
6th. Any other brothers?
No.
Okay.
No.
Wow, the golden child. I love it.
The only boy in a family full of sisters. He doesn't know how to share because he never had to share anything, and everybody does stuff for him. Like he always got stuff done for him. He didn't have to do anything.
So where are you in the stepping?
I have 3 older, 2 younger.
Okay. Oh, great. Right in the middle.
No, it's the perfect place for dysfunctional behavior. Learn dysfunctional behavior.
So that's my 5.
That's beautiful. I love that. Tom?
So a dinner party for 6 on the boat is actually beautiful.
Okay.
Because we have a beautiful cabin below. The guy who built the boat built a beautiful mahogany table that it folds up. It's like an origami project, but when you unfold it, it's a really beautiful table. We just did it when we took the boat around. It was cold. The overnight part of the trip was cold, so we all got in the cabin. Got the stove going and heated it up. So I think actually a dinner party on that boat would be really kind of fun. And
I think it's a floating RV is what it is. He's like, no, it's a boat. I'm okay.
Wait, I'm just trying to figure out how you got back. If you...
I picked him up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
How did
He has
they
to come
get
and get us,
back? It's like a big swim.
I think I would have to get Mother Teresa just because she was such a
So influential.
So influential, and probably my grandmother. I'd bring
Okay.
her back for that conversation. She was the matriarch of the family, and we were very close. So, and I miss her. I think I would ask JFK
Oh, good one.
to join, because just as a political figure or hero, that generational change, and the kind of things I think he called the country to,
Right.
is very unique and a really interesting moment in time. So it would be interesting to see what he's thinking about the times we live in now, and what kind of strategies he might use to kind of change the way the world is currently working or not working. That's 3. I get 2 more.
Yes. I love your choices so far. I loved everybody's choices actually.
I think I would actually ask probably James Joyce. I would ask somebody who's impacted literature and impact and perspective at a time in life. And so as an Irish writer in his generation, what he wrote about and how he wrote about it, the context of what Irish culture and life is like, in the good and the bad of it. Like I think a lot of us sometimes overly mythologize. Like it was rough. There was life in those days was rough. My grandparents grew up in them. My great grandparents lived through those times themselves, and I just think he was a witness to what shaped me, and he put it into such a beautiful, such a beautiful gift of literature. But I think I would really appreciate just learning from him, and then what would you say, you?
Well, you
No,
don't
no,
have to
you
pick
can't.
that. He's going to be there anyway.
Right.
He's an automatic.
Somebody's got to cook.
Clearly.
I kind of think, honestly, I would pick somebody in the future.
Oh, okay.
Probably my niece Colleen, who has Down syndrome. I would pick her at 50 or 60
Okay.
to
Great.
join, because the world is so different
Right.
for her, and she has such an incredible view of the world that I'd love to see what her life is going to be, who she's going to be at 50 or
Right.
60 years old.
Right.
20 years ago, they would have told you people with Down syndrome didn't live
Right.
to those age. That's no longer the case. Like her in the future, what she can become as a person living with Down syndrome, I think would be a fascinating person.
Great.
So I would pick her,
Wonderful.
her future self,
Right.
to join that conversation, just because I think it would be fascinating.
Right. Great.
To see that.
Just quickly, you're a realtor, so how do you feel about the rising cost of real estate here in Delaware? And it's all over Delaware. It's not just Lewis. Delaware is like the place to be.
It doesn't help that it does or doesn't help, depending on your perspective, that a magazine like, I think it was the Town and Country magazine, came out and said that Lewis and Rehoboth are like the 2 of the best places to retire. in the United States.
Right.
That
Delaware
was
went
this
after
month.
retirees.
This
Yes.
last month or so it came out.
Yeah.
So that's bringing more and more people here, and it's great because we didn't have any restaurants in Lewis. We had one little restaurant which served one meal. That was it. You go into Sue Florio's restaurant, and she had a big menu, but every night she'd say, "We only have spaghetti with meatballs." That's it. So okay, so it's
Her last
evolved,
name was Florio.
but we want all that. We want bike trails. We want to have these
Right.
spaces, and you can't have both. If you don't have the people here to support the restaurants, people are amazed. We were walking just the evolution of how back when we first came here, our dogs used to sleep in the streets here. Now we couldn't even get a reservation at a restaurant down here now. It's crazy.
Right.
On a Wednesday night or Thursday night, it's busy.
Right.
So that's kind of the change and the evolution here, which I love. I mean, I like the fact that it's grown. But you're right, it is difficult for people to come here. I think a lot of the retirees are coming because they're selling their house with that cash and they're bringing it here. They're not really using
Right.
a lot of mortgage. So with interest rates rising, it has an impact on people saying, I can't afford to sell because I can't afford to buy.
Controlled development is really the thing that people need to. Thoughtful development is what we need to think about, and I think the town has a really thoughtful development objective. The county is just run by greedy former farmers who are not interested, and honestly, they're all conservative Republicans who are looking at the money, and they're not looking at the quality of life issues, and so they'll just
Right.
approve anything
Right.
that is going to be maximum taxation opportunities, and that does not build community.
Right.
It may build revenue, but it
Right.
doesn't build community. And,
Right.
and I do think there's a moment right now, which is why this Open Space Alliance thing is so important to us.
Right.
There's a moment right now where we have to say, look, we have to get in to protect that as a community, not one. So the Rollins family is giving the property, but we've got to buy. The Open Space Alliance has to buy it. We have to raise the money to maintain it.
Yeah.
The state had to give, and the city had to give money for tax abatements to do it. It's a community effort. Whenever you do development or projects that build to the betterment of community, you're always going to do better. Whenever you watch people make decisions that are not about community, they're only about self-interest, and we can take that large or small, you do not get great results when people
Right.
look at things only from their personal
Right.
self-interest, whether
Right.
they be former presidents or whether they be county commissioners. Self-interested people do not make good community-based decisions, quality-of-life decisions.
And it's interesting. We think at the Open Space Alliance, we were saying, why don't we go to these big developers and say, hey, you need to contribute back to help us preserve this space. And said, you guys keep building on it, and you keep selling. Oh, you're close to the beach, and you've got these bike trails. They're using all the things that people enjoy, but they're not willing to contribute. It all goes into their pockets. So I think we need
They're our
to.
competitor at some
Yes.
level for the space. They're
Yes,
competing
they're
for that
competing,
space.
right. So the one thing I like to just briefly talk about is like what makes Lewis and Rehoboth and communities like this special is small business. I am a huge supporter and proponent of small business. I know you guys don't know that. One of my clients is a small business district in Philadelphia. And I believe that small business is for the community to support it because it's so important in the community, because normally small business owners live in the community, raise their family in community, employ people in the community that then give back, spend money in the community, right? So is that one of the things that you believe is sort of, it's like for me, that's interesting. Like I want to be in a community like that. Do you feel that that is a big appeal?
Huge. Our next door neighbors, Sam and Mariah Calcioni, and they they started Dogfish Head, the beer.
Okay.
And the company, and they are the largest employers now in Sussex County,
Wow.
I believe.
No, so, BB still is in Bay Health.
Oh,
the healthcare.
But they're in the top 10.
Right.
Okay.
But but they are the largest contributors, as far as I know, of not-for-profits here.
Right. You want to talk about a small business?
Yeah, that gives back. It's incredible
Small
what
that's
they
gotten
do.
bigger.
Correct.
In a good way.
And so
Right.
and so we know what they've done, and they're actually a great example for everybody else.
Okay. Yeah, Griffey knows Sam.
Oh, do you? I mean, it's just they're awesome people, and she was just awarded a national. I think it was the Jackie Kennedy Award in New York about a week or so ago, for their contribution for giving back to the communities. They did the Lewis Taxi. They did the Arts Festival here. They just involved with so many different things.
Right.
Incredible people, very altruistic. And then our neighbors, like 2 doors down from there, they're the ones that do this huge event. And I mean, so that's the type of community that we are.
Right.
And they do it, which I think just demonstrates to other people that we need to do it as well.
Right.
One of the things that's changed, two things I think have changed here. One is the bike trail. Lewis and Rehoboth never were connected.
Right, but
And
now they are.
Now they are. So you could bike from Rehoboth to Lewis and Lewis to Rehoboth. And it's amazing to see that kind of community coming back and forth. Joe Biden's on the bike trail all the time. So that bike trail, I think, is great for the two communities coming together. The second thing is, believe it or not, is pickleball. Kind of crazy. But
Okay.
Totally crazy.
Crazy, but we have now formed some of the best friendships and with our neighbors that we didn't necessarily know so well. So
Okay.
I play with probably, like, we have a little, it's called the pickleball losers. That's the name of our little.
Aptly named.
Yes.
Your little group.
We're the losers. So, but we, and so we have a little group that gets together. But, and it's great. It's all different socioeconomic groups that come together, ages. It's super fun.
You go into Kindle, or you go into, we usually go in on Thursday nights. It's like when we get here on Thursdays, we go to Kindle for dinner. Like, I'll see his parents. I'll see them. It's like it's not Cheers in the same way because it's not a but it has that everybody knows your name, and you feel familiar, and you never feel like you can't come here and go someplace and see somebody that you know, and genuinely want to see them, and hang out with them.
It makes the place extra special.
It does.
Like, I
Well,
feel
it's,
like
it's a
it is.
community. It's a real community.
Right.
And it's so funny. It kind of goes back to, as a gay man, we came here to hide in the 80s.
Okay.
We got away from our work. We could come down here. You'd go to Rehoboth. You could be who you wanted to be. And then you went back home and you never talked about your weekend. You never talked about anything. I never did. You just went to work all week, never talk about what you did. Then you come down here and you're relaxed.
Right.
And now it's that has evolved now, and it's changed so much that we now come down here and we're out to everybody. Nobody really cares.
No,
and
nobody
it's just
cares.
And that's what's made all the
Right.
difference in the world.
Right.
So it's changed from being like such a small insular community to which is where these little dinner parties came from.
Right.
We gathered together because we could hide and be together. I mean, if you
Right.
look at these old movies that you see, like Rock Hudson and stuff, they're very similar. I mean, they
Yes.
hid in little enclaves, and then they were straight during the week, and then they would get back together again. And it's like, okay. And we basically did the same thing.
Right. Right. So, folks, if you want to learn about the rest of the cast from dinner parties, please look at our show and watch our podcasts. And Instagram us and Facebook us and like us and all of the above. And hopefully we'll have a few more shows out shortly. I want to thank Vince and Tom for their time today. And just keep on watching.
And that concludes today's episode. To show your support, you can go to www.sheridangroupdc.com. To purchase Tom's book, Helping the Good Do Better, How a White Hat Lobbyist Advocates for Social Change, you can head to Amazon.com or purchase at most major book sites. To follow Open Space Alliance, you can go to osalewis.org or find them on Instagram at osa_Lewis. Support for the show comes from Blind Eye Productions and in collaboration with Cabin Fever Events Company. We are currently looking for funding to finalize the production of our Season 1. If you or an organization you are a part of would like to participate, please reach out to us at dinnerpartiesrehobothbeach@gmail.com. Like I said, that is dinnerpartiesrehobothbeach@gmail.com. Other than that, please take time, watch episode 1, see what we're all about, as well as follow us on social media to keep up with the cast members. Other than that, have a great day, and thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.